The following is a presentation of the ForceCenter podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is the ForceCenter podcast feed, and this particular episode is a deep dive. What are we diving into? Well, hey, it's a book. Those things we talk about during the Audible promotion, every episode, we're finally getting back to discussing one. We're going to be discussing Battle Scars by Sam Meggs. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Napzok, and I am out of practice on deep diving into books, Star Wars books. I'll admit right now, I felt a little lost on how to even take notes, how to remember things I read, but this was a great book to get back into it all with, and a lot of fun. We have Post-it notes on pages. We're ready.
I got the book with in-grasp and no dust cover so I don't mess up the pretty picture. I'm ready to go. As always, we want to have a little time to talk about Audible. We really do. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. This episode, we're going to recommend the book we're about to speak about, Battle Scars by Sam Meggs. If you want to download your free audiobook today, you can go to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. One more time, that's audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for your free audiobook. Maybe you want to listen to our spoiler-filled review, then listen to an audiobook, or you could pause right now, go get this audiobook, listen to it, and then complete listening to this podcast. Just an adventure of several hours. Maybe that's what you're interested in. All sorts of books to check out. Ken, we also have our current ask.
That's right. We'd love we're asking for you to consider, head over to patreon.com/ForceCenter and support us over there. It's a direct way to support the show and help us continue to grow and try new things, or just do special things like our current goal. Our new goal is if we hit $2,200 a month, we will do another live Star Wars ranked exclusive for our patrons. And of course, we'll release that to the public like we did with our favorite sequel trilogy scenes episode. But we're going to do that again. And if we hit that goal, we're very close. Help us make that happen as we continue to build ForceCenter 9 seasons strong and going. Also, to help us do that, we have a survey out there. I really love this survey. I think Joseph did a wonderful job as a market researcher putting together 10 great questions that kind of help us look to the future with you. And we would love to have some answers. The survey goes until May 17th, 8 p.m. Pacific. And we'd love to get a total of 1,000 responses, 1,000 responses. So that's kind of the number where you can kind of get an actual picture of what is on all of your minds. To do that, go to this link, or the easy thing, just go to our Twitter page where it's linked. But surveymonkey.com/r/VJK8K79. Surveymonkey.com/r/VJK8K79. Toll free, call, request a song for the radio station today. All right, there you go. That's our asks.
You did a great job reading the link. You sounded like Pong Krell yelling out a clone trooper's entire number, which is just not an efficient way to give orders on the battlefield, to speak nothing of how dehumanizing it is. Use their nicknames. It's faster, easier to shout. Anyway, a little Pong Krell judgment there before we get into our main topic for today.
A drive-by Pong Krell insult. Love it.
It really is. There'll be a lot of those. I think we'll change it to ForceCenter, aka that Pong Krell. That's the subtitle of our podcast now. Anyway, we are excited to discuss this book. As always, we want to give you the warning noise, awooga, awooga, full spoilers. So if you haven't read the book yet, this is a full spoiler review. This book, Ken, is, of course, I don't know exactly what the right noun is. It is a story that happens between the story that happens in 2 video games. And I don't mean that in any sort of a dismissive way. I just want to give it that context, because to me it does affect the way that I absorb the book, because I already knew these characters from the video game Jedi Fallen Order. Kind of have a different relationship with some of them because I played them, with Cal Kestis. It's like, it's weird to read a book about, this is about this character Cal Kestis, but also for several months in 2019, I was Cal Kestis.
Yeah.
Anybody who has played the video game, it has that kind of connection, I think, with the character and these characters. And then on the other side of it, the video game that was recently released, Jedi: Survivor, which I have not played, and unfortunately, I'm not going to have an opportunity to play for a little while. So, wanted to put it in context for our conversation. But from that, Ken, let's just talk big picture. For you, what was your big picture reaction to Battle Scars? Love it, like it, struggle with it? Why? Affected by the video game
Mhm.
sandwich that it
Mhm.
is? How did you feel?
A little bit. I've been open with in the past. Obviously, as I said before, I didn't connect with Fallen Order as much as other people did, which again, totally fine. Star Wars is a big buffet, and some days the French fries don't hit you right, and that's okay. But I loved it, and I think it's a beautiful game. And I've started to play Survivor, and I've been struggling with the game already. So I'm in the same spot I was in 2019 with just the game, which is more the game than the characters. That said, I really like this book because I sat down with these characters in a way I hadn't before, other
Mm.
than your great example of playing Cal Kestis. Um, and I really got to know them. And that sounds, I don't know, could be cheesy, right? I got to know these characters, but I did, especially like I like Greez. I've always liked Greez. You and I just did a data bank dive on Greez, but I feel I know Greez better. And actually, I'm like, oh yeah, my instincts are right. I think I am Greez, including my love of salt. So here we go. So that's where I started with this book. I think you could always, we said this before with some of the other quote unquote tie-in books, the Halcyon hotel tie-in book, or Batu tie-in book, the Delilah Dawson book. You could always easily overlook a video game tie-in story. And we kind of waited to get into this book closer to the game so we could tie our release to the game. So even then you could overlook it. But I think this does a great job standing on its own while also moving and feeling like a game. The plot kind of whizzes by quick. There's, it's not like a ton of things happen in terms of the plot. I don't think you need to, because that's how a video game moves. And there's some fun descriptions of video game actions and all that kind of stuff all the way through it. So it felt right. It felt true to these characters. It felt true to what was going on. And two final points here, Joseph. I think it's great to have someone like Sam Maggs writing this and kind of representing a different generation of writers and storytellers, and what she took from the game and what she put into these characters, and what meant a lot to her shines through. And it's a perspective change that's always needed. And the publishing side has done, I think, the best job at that regard.
Hmm.
I think that's another victory for this book as well. And it contains one of my favorite philosophical conversations, Cal and Sear conversation. I know you liked as well. We're going to talk a lot about it today. But when this book goes back on the shelf and 2 years from now, I'm like, oh yeah, Battle Scars. That's the scene I'll remember. That's the chapter I'll remember. And anytime a book can do that in Star Wars, I really have an affinity for it. So we're in a good spot as we dive into Battle Scars.
Good. Now, I agree with a lot of your thoughts. I think the characters for me, this book was like returning to characters that I knew and loved. I think for Jedi Fallen Order, there are a couple of gameplay things that frustrated me.
Mhm.
I'm not a fan of the kinds of levels where you're going along and you get to explore and you can backtrack, but then you gotta ride a weird beast and you can't figure out, or at least I can't. It's frustrating to figure out, how do I go back to that place I was before, because
Mhm.
you're so not quite railroaded, but swept through. So I don't like that functionality of the game. We have discussed at considerable length the ludo narrative dissonance, my favorite term I learned because of this game,
Mhm.
of Cal going on his journey to reconnect to being a Jedi, to reconnect to peace and nature, and slaughtering a lot of animals
Mhm.
along the way. That bump for me a little bit in the game. But for Jedi Fallen Order, I really loved the characters. I really loved the story. I was really moved by it. That was a 10 out of 10 for me. So I was extremely excited to go back to these characters. I was thrilled by spending so much time on Dathomir and meeting Marin, and this idea that that Cal and Sarah and Marin all shared this history of kind of having lost their people, and
Mhm.
maybe they would have been at odds at a different time in a different era, but connecting. And the idea that Marin was willing to leave Dathomir, the planet that gave her so much definition
Mm.
and explore like that part of the story was particularly affecting and moving to me. So I was really excited to get into this story, and everything kind of story wise and character wise was great for this book for me. I particularly liked Marin's journey. I like that we spent a lot of time with all the characters, particularly Cal, but in a lot of ways it feels like Marin's story, Marin's book. I've seen people discussing with great importance, and also sometimes just a little bit of a sense of fun of wow, thirsty Star Wars book,
Yeah.
because we don't have as many of those. So I want to acknowledge the fun of it,
Mhm.
but also the importance of it, the importance of Marin's journey internally, but also her romance with Fret, and that
Mhm.
sex and sexuality and attraction are important parts of existing. No matter what your relationship with it is, it's an important part of in the real world of being a human. Even if your relationship with it is, I'm not I'm not that into it, but the entire rest of the world is. Every billboard wants me to be
Mhm.
invested in this. So sex, sexuality, romance, important to us as humans, baked into Star Wars as well, I think, from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And a lot of Star Wars stories that just haven't made it a priority in recent times. That's
Mhm.
another place where I do feel like the publishing has spent a little bit more time. Princess and the Scoundrel had some great romance. Dark
Mhm.
Disciple, I think, has some great
Yeah.
intense
Yeah.
romance and sexuality. But this journey, um, that it was so important to Marin, so important to her story, written with what to me felt like such a truth and passion, was one of my favorite parts of the book.
Yeah.
I also really loved Sarah and Cal's wrestling with how to be a Jedi. I love the entire dysfunctional family dynamic throughout the book. That was one of the things that spoke to me the most, of the kind
Mm.
of constant refrain of we love each other so much, we'll do anything for one another. There's lots of things we're not going to say to one another, or we're afraid to say to one another. I absolutely love that. I also felt like it was really interesting to lean into the video game dynamic so
Mhm.
much, with just the literal choices of a lot of what Cal in particular is doing. But
Mhm.
you know, running on walls, cutting cables,
Yeah. Yeah.
dodging them. The jokes about falling from high places. There's a passage that made it clear that he could do the double jump.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
boggling being on the ship is just narrative, but the psychometry, the thing that is a power and a part of the narrative in the video game, but also a video game function, so you can
Mhm.
learn things by Cal touching them and spending a little bit more time on that. The stim canisters,
Yeah.
taking something that's a kind of a video game functionality thing and really baking it into the narrative. I thought that it was just kind of fascinating. It made it sort of fresh and interesting moments where it took parts of the video game that have a level of functionality and gave them depth and meaning, and other parts where it almost felt a little to me tongue in cheek, with just
Mhm.
giving Cal, parts of the missions where he's running through a sewer and having to run on the wall and do the double jump, and
Mhm.
everybody talking about he's always in high places. He's always at a risk of falling from high places. Did you feel like there was an element of tongue in cheek about that aspect of video game play as narrative?
Yeah. No, there's absolutely some of that going on in there where I think it's just kind of acknowledging even some of the not even the critiques of the Fallen Order, but just the gameplay style in general. Like, there's some stuff about Cal you and I might talk about, even how she wrote Cal at some point being a little blank and naive. I don't mean that to insult Cal, but just like, yeah, because you're supposed to imprint on the character while you play the game. It's supposed to be
Hmm.
Cal, but it also could be you. So there's a little bit of a blank slate that they get to play around with it, and I think Sam Meggs did a great job of that. My favorite one was the double jump, because I sometimes struggle to really get my rhythm with a double jump. And so I kind of pointed at it when I read it and was like, yes, that's what it feels like. Good job. Good job. And the stim thing is really interesting, because that is extra life, right? Video games. That is,
Hmm.
we all have grown up with that.
Get your health bar back.
Get
Yeah.
your health bar back. I almost, wish there was a Contra cheat code in this novel that we could talk about. Get 30 lives. But the stim one is, that's that's a realistic look at it anyway. So I think, yeah, you're right, tongue in cheek, but also, yeah, this is a story of a video game character, and it played very real at times for me.
Yeah, I think I was borderline challenged by the sheer volume of stims that Cal
Mhm.
did, but
You
in
might
the
have a
end,
stim problem. Let's be honest. You might have a stim problem.
that was the thing, because I think I teetered on the edge of, like, if this was I think it's one of those, like, why don't other Jedi do this,
Mhm,
or
mhm.
other fighters? Why doesn't Han have some version of stim canister gum to keep him going at night, you know? And I think
Where's my gum, Leia?
I need my stim gum, Chewie. Um but you can always fall down that rabbit hole, which I don't always like, of like, well,
Mm,
if this one character did this one thing X, why doesn't all characters do that? If they had
yeah.
this tech here, why don't they always use that? Like, I'm usually not, I don't, I want to focus on the narrative. So what I did like is that, to me, it dovetailed with Cal's obsession to put himself is the one in danger, and to push
Mhm.
himself even farther and farther than he could, to the point where, like, it's like, yeah, no, I go out there and I fight, I press my connection to the force, I'm shoving the force through my body, and my body starts to fall apart to the
Yeah.
point where I just got my droid just throwing me drugs constantly. It actually does fit really, really well to me with his psychology, his action,
Mhm.
his choices.
No, I really love what you're saying. And as someone who plays, when I play video games, I'm like, all right, so I got 3 stim canisters. Great. I can go up to the edge of that before I die. I'm gonna push forward. I'm not gonna run and hide. I'm not gonna wait for my moment to strike the stormtroopers. I'm just gonna do it because I got 3 stim cans in my back pocket. That'll help me get through it. It does not always work on any of these games that I play. But it did kind of feel at times like, buddy, lay off the Advil. Lay off the Advil.
Yeah.
Take 4 a day at most.
Ask for some help. Ask for some help. Through the force, all things are possible. Yeah. Very, very fun. There's a lot in this book that's very deep and very fun. So here was my one thing that is not a criticism of the book. I think it is the nature of the book, but it was a bump for me, and I'll be interested to hear from
Mhm,
listeners who have a different perspective. It was a bump for them. Um, the only knowledge I have right now of the video game Jedi Survivor is the trailers. So I knew that, that some things had happened, like Sarah was off with an archive, and I'm
mhm,
paraphrasing, but there's a little scene in the trailer where Sarah's saying something to Cal, like, "You've been out there really making a lot of noise," and then we cut
mhm,
to Cal slaughtering Jedi. It's like,
mhm,
ooh, interesting. Um, I think I had a little bit of a preconceived notion that this book might walk the characters up to the video game,
mhm, mhm,
and I was fine that they didn't do that. But the book spent some time setting up issues that I feel like maybe the game deals with narratively, like Sarah's desire to start the Jedi Archive.
mhm.
Um, Obviously, a huge thrust of the book is Marin's relationship with Fret, but it felt like Cal and Marin had uh there's lots of, they had feelings for one another, but didn't know how to deal with them, didn't know how
Mhm.
to express them, didn't fully acknowledge them, were afraid of them. Maybe Cal needs
Yeah.
just a birds and the bees talk, maybe, I don't know.
He
um
doesn't seem to know what goes on behind closed doors there. No.
no, very funny. But it felt like something that the book was building. So I
Mhm,
thought, well, maybe the book is going to turn the page on that toward the end. Something as simple as Greez getting his new arm.
mhm,
It felt to me like the story that the book was telling was resolved well, but the book spent a lot of time on threads that didn't get resolved in the book. And I bet it would not have bumped for me at all if I put this book down and started playing Jedi Survivor.
mhm,
So I wanted to bring it up because it was a bump for me, but I think it really is from the perspective of the next chapter isn't accessible to me right now. I don't have
mhm.
$600 to buy
Yeah.
the PS5 and the game, and I don't have the time to drop everything, frankly redo my living room to accommodate that beast of a machine and play it. It's just like, it's just not accessible to me right now. It might be in a couple months.
Mhm,
But it did make me, I was so engaged by the archive idea, so engaged
mhm.
by Callan Marin, where's this going? That it felt like sad to me to not get to continue with that story.
Yeah, no, I really get that, and you said you had a preconceived notion. I'll just call myself out and say I just kind of assumed it was going to walk this up to the front door of Survivor. And at this point of our recording, I've only played one day for about 2 hours and didn't get past the opening credits. I'm going to continue. By the time you all listen to this, I'll probably have played some more. Just by the way life's been going. And it's clear that that's not necessarily the case. And like you said, that's not something the book has failed to do. It's just what the book set out what it needed to do. I think the excitement maybe I have is it could be there's room for stories between it, and something you'd be excited for as well. But yeah, no, I think it got to the end, and I had it was like quizzical feelings of this didn't go where I thought it would go. I thought it would end. So I'm with you on that there, but we'll have to figure out a way. We'll watch all those cutscenes on YouTube.
We'll watch the cutscenes, or I don't know. I'll figure something out. Somehow I'll figure it out piece by piece. And I did want to acknowledge that I do love. We'll talk about it. I do love the piece by piece story that Cal shares, and that gives him some peace in his conversation with Sarah. I do like that was the last line of the book, the last idea of the book, and I think to some extent that theme, that conclusion does acknowledge what I'm talking about. Of the book plays really, really fair with these are the characters in the middle of their journey. I think Marin goes on a fairly complete arc. The other characters are pointed in a direction that is new, but the book isn't in any way saying that it's resolved. Instead, it's saying,
right, yeah,
this is life. We're in a hard time. These characters aren't going to have these total answers. This is the middle of their story in a very difficult time where all they can do is figure out how to put one foot in front of the other piece by piece. So I want to be clear that I'm not criticizing the quality of the writing. It was an experience thing of this kind of interconnected storytelling that I haven't experienced in a little while, where I was like, oh, this book is designed to be a part of the story, and right now I don't get to experience the other part of the story.
Yeah, then that's a downright bummer.
It is. Yeah, it is. But let's enjoy the story that we had. So there's some overall reactions. I want to get into some of the themes and the big ideas. The way Ken and I have taken to doing some of these the book reports is, hey, I was an obsessive book report writer, so I write up some ideas of the big ideas, lay them out, and then Ken and I discuss them. So you ready, Ken?
I am ready, because I have a habit of finishing a chapter and go, wow, I decided what I want to go have for dinner. What did I read? All right, let me go back. So, yes, this is why we combine our efforts here.
Yes, this is also why I've taken to setting aside some hours and power reading a book. This was a 2-sitting book for me. Yeah. So ultimately, I really think this story, kind of suggested by that title, Battle Scars, this is a story about trauma. It's this idea of, can the characters find a way to address their trauma that helps them move forward? Or will they give in to fear, to violence, to really literally hiding from themselves and others? I thought the idea of hiding was a really great, really big part of this book. So I wanted to take this idea of they're in trauma, they're trying to find a way forward, there are threats of making not good choices, not connecting, and break that down into some parts to discuss. So I want to start with the big picture idea of trauma, or again, the title of the book, Battle Scars. In a lot of ways, this is just a straightforward study of characters. There is a plot there with a beginning, a middle, and an end about the shroud. But the book feels to me much more of like a character study, and it's about characters defined by their wounds, and we get to spend a decent amount of time in the headspace of the characters as they wrestle pretty straightforward about how to move forward while acknowledging the truth of their wounds. So just straightforward stuff here. Cal, obviously, we know this from the original video game, lost his master, Jaro Tapel, his order, his childhood, which I love that he kind of reflects on that of I did this, that was it for me. He lost the not even great life he had on Braca and the friend he had there, and he is really struggling to find resolution. Sarah similarly lost the Jedi Order, lost her Padawan Trilla, lost for a time her path as a Jedi, and really needs to reclaim that. Similarly, Marin lost her people, her planet. And in this story, this new idea that she's at risk of losing her magic
Mm.
and her sense of self. I didn't write down the page, but a pretty direct quote from there. And Marin is, "What is a night sister of Dathomir with no sisters and no Dathomir? I am neither a night sister nor from Dathomir,"
Mm.
but very relatable sentence.
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely.
and then I thought it was interesting because those are all trauma battle scars that we know from the video games that these characters are moving forward and dealing with in a new way. And as I'm reading the book, I'm going like, I'm sure Greez has some trauma in his life, right? I'm sure he got grumpy from something. But I thought it was really interesting then that he gets a fresh scar, a fresh
Mhm.
trauma, the physical loss of his arm, but also the deep connection to his ship, uh, possibly a large wound in his ability to trust his family and what they're doing. Even the side characters whose head we don't go into as much are focused on trauma.
Mm.
Fret's mission is to do right by her girlfriend Erie, who she believes to be dead, by finding her plans for the shroud. That's trying to address a trauma. The fifth brother blames the Jedi for taking him as a child, blames the Jedi and the Republic for the devastation of his home planet. So every character is really motivated by trauma, trauma, trauma. How does this theme of scars in trauma affect you, Ken? What is powerful or relatable about that idea?
I think I start with this. I think trauma is a big word. I think this was the key to the last video game, which was why a lot of people loved it. And trauma, this is a total personal opinion for me, can sometimes become a bit of a buzzword, and therefore, I don't know, can kind of lose effect, and how you relate to it, relate to that word and its meanings can be affected by how it's presented. But this book does a great job of taking that big concept and reminding us that that reflects a lot of things. Trauma does not necessarily mean you had to have been a Jedi who survived Order 66. It could also mean a loss of community, a loss of purpose, something that caused that to happen. And this book and all these characters work through it in different ways. I love that. I'll keep going back to the Grease thing, and I'm glad you highlighted it. That it was like he earned his wings. You've got something big here too, and how it goes beyond just the arm to what you exactly what you said. That ship was it's kind of designed for his forearms, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so trauma isn't just necessarily what happened to you. It's how it continues to affect you, or how it continues to how you can continue to struggle with it, and maybe how you struggle to even discover what that trauma really truly is. And I thought this book succeeded when it was a lot of those really quiet moments where trauma wasn't a big giant billboard buzzword. It was something real and small for these characters. And when I say small, I mean maybe more intimate and personal, but certainly big for them emotionally. So I really love that part of the approach of that word trauma here.
Yeah, I think it's one of those great examples of Star Wars taking something big and operatic and mythic,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like you're part of a fabled Jedi Order, but they lose their way and they're all slaughtered. And Order 66, we've all had that. Or you're a witch on this planet that was viciously like. Um, Certainly, there have been people who've been through sadly real world traumas that do echo that level of trauma. But I
Yeah.
think it's so big, but it is in mythic, but it's so relatable because I
Mm-hmm.
think even when we can, as individuals, identify something that's a trauma, um, I think it can be such a challenge to go. But how's it really affecting me?
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to say the billboard of obvious trauma,
Mm-hmm.
car accident, a robbery, losing a cherished job or a friend. And like, yep, the trauma of that is obvious, but how is it truly affecting me? How am I truly carrying it? Is I think a lot of what these characters are going through.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going through this temptation to wallow in it and live in it and live in the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we'll talk a lot as well about all of them having a different purpose. And what I thought was really interesting is we set up the trauma of these characters so we can watch them try to find a way forward.
Yeah.
And I think a thing that was extremely relatable to me is I think scars and pain and trauma needs to be addressed.
Mhm.
But there's this fine line between this desire to somehow fix
Mhm.
something that happened in the past
Mhm.
versus move forward.
Mhm.
I don't need to get into any great details, but like all of us, I've had some traumas in my youth growing up that I know are there,
Yeah.
but then I've just really been aware of like how much are my actions continuing to be motivated by thinking if I do X in the future, it will magically fix
Mm.
this thing that's been sitting in my soul for decades
Mm.
versus I don't need to fix it.
Yeah.
It happened. I need to be I need to find a way to not let my trauma hold me back versus being obsessed with doing some one symbolic act that fixes it. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. And this is, this is why we love discussing Star Wars in this way. This is a fun video game book, but I think it can really reach out and find you. And giving a personal example from my life, and you said something earlier that made me think about it. It's like people have real giant big traumas, right? And I think that sometimes this maybe is for me. You can reserve that word for that. Like, well, that
Mhm.
person, you said car accident. We'll go with that. That person had a horrible car accident, and that's the trauma. George Lucas had a horrible car accident, and that was a traumatic thing in his life. I haven't had that. I've had a fender bender. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. And then and you have a sense to overlook what you're actually dealing with. This might be the Greez perspective, maybe for me, why I do love Greez on a grumpy level, but I love Greez now even more after this book of everyone else is experiencing something. He's not looking at himself. Quick personal. Like I wanted to be a baseball player. Ninth grade, I shot it from a high school team, and I got cut. And I could have dealt with that and could have had help dealing with that in a different way. That was a trauma for me because that's who I thought I was. I thought I was going to be, and I didn't get it. And instead of getting back to the batting cage the next day or anything, and maybe didn't have the skills to make that happen, I carry that with me where anything
Mm.
I'm going to do, including taping a comedy special or when I was doing the groundlings and I got cut from that. It's like, yep, well, this is what happens to me because I was not good enough then and I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to identify it as a traumatic experience. It was just a bad break. I didn't make the team. And you can be like, pick yourself up, kid, and dust yourself off and get back out there, which is maybe not a bad response for everybody. But I don't think I view that as traumatic because other people have horrible things and they do. And so, but personally, that's something that's dominated my life for the next 30 years now,
Mhm.
where I always feel like, well, what's the point? I'm going to get cut anyways. And I think this book is there's the Jedi Order 66, the destruction, the complete annihilation of the Night Sisters on Dathomir. There's that kind of stuff. And then there's a seer who to me is a great example of like, carrying the loss of Trilla with her all the way through, maybe not
Mhm.
realizing it till now. All those kind of things in this book. That's why I'm saying that on an intimate level, it broke it down and how everyone's like, cool, what do we do? And what is our purpose? Which we'll talk about later. But it all kind of emerges from identifying the trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. And Greases is so we so lived through it with him in this book.
Yeah.
The other traumas we're aware of, we played some of them in the video game if you play the video game. But Grease is it's obviously it's a huge trauma, but it's relatable just frankly from aging. That idea of like I used to be able to do this really well. I used to define myself on it. I was never super strong, but I was always real flexible. And I damaged my, my knees
Mm, mm,
from physical comedy and not taking care of myself. And like, I'm not, that part of me is gone. And things that I would normally be like, I still think of my head as like, oh yeah, I'm a person who can, sit on the floor and pop up real quick. And I can sit on the
yes.
floor and with my legs tucked under me for hours at a time. Like, no, I can't.
Okay.
I
Okay.
can't. And that's a weird, dumb example, but it's like, I still think of myself as a person who can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it feels like, oh yeah, I can't. How do I manage this? And
Mm,
how do I not feel a sense of loss?
yeah.
uh, so to kind of blow that up to somebody like Grease, or like the literalness of I need to fly forward, but
Mhm.
I nothing works the way it's supposed to anymore. Really
Yeah.
powerful.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, ouch, I lost an arm. That's bad. Oh, what's also bad is now I can't fly my ship. I'm not connected to it. Who I am is gone. And that's where you have to start rebuilding from. But yeah, I get you.
Yeah. So you talked about a couple of the characters' journey. We both talked about Greez. Is there a character whose scars affect you more than others in the book?
I do go definitely go to like I said, I'll keep going to good old Grease there. And for me, I don't know, again, it's something I identified with. But there's something about Grumpy Grease taking some action and maybe taking action that he normally doesn't do and committing to an action, committing to a moment, and committing in a way to those around him. And then he pays the price for it. And maybe I don't know, Grease is a youngster, but maybe that's why that's why I don't do that. And so having
Hmm.
he pays a price for it. He like you said, he earns his trauma. But for me, it came from like, all right, I'm gonna, I don't have the exact details of that scene in front of me right now, but like, all right, Grease has got to go to the floor. He's got to go to the mat, and I got to handle this. Normally, I'm up flying, but I got to do this, and he commits to that, and I think that's a good thing. But that he gets it, and that's kind of even going back to what I was talking about. Is sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna launch this new show. Probably not going to work though, because that's what happens. I'm not going to do it, and I'm afraid to maybe pay the price too in a weird way. And I'm
Yeah.
afraid because it's that you might be afraid you can't recover. I don't know. So
Yeah.
that's Grease stuff. Love to hear your thoughts on that. I also have some Sears stuff too, but Grumpy Grease and his salt.
Yeah, no, I agree with Grease in his restaurant dreams. But I think Sarah's journey really
Yeah.
really hit me. I think it is carrying over some power from her story in the video game. That she didn't just fail herself, but she directly failed the person she was supposed to protect and save in Trilla. I love that that gets followed up on in such interesting ways in this book. That in some ways she is a character that has her feet under her a little bit more. That she is
Mhm.
certain of what she doesn't want to do. She does not want to give in to the dark side again.
Right.
Um, I love that she. I love just the great canon lore, Star Wars lore thing that she and Cal sincerely believe we might be the last two Jedi. We don't know. It's possible
Right.
that
We don't know.
this is it. We know we have the holocron of some younglings out there, uh,
Mhm.
but I love the intersection of her scar and Grease's loss.
Mm.
That on
Yeah.
paper, Sarah has a lot of great things going on. She is confident about what she doesn't want to do. She is confident in her power level. I love what's going through her
Mhm.
head when she confronts the fifth brother. And she has a trauma that is an
Mhm.
exciting, dynamic version of, I think, something that's happened to me. So maybe that's why it connected.
Mm.
She makes, in some ways, a great choice to choose empathy, to
Yeah.
choose, I'm not going to try to kill you. I'm going to try to take, I'm going to will your lightsaber apart. It's like a huge cheer and applause moment.
Mhm.
Uh, and even in this moment of sort of doing what you're supposed to do, she potentially takes it too far,
Yeah.
needs the empathy. I think it's is it Cal or Grease who says, you're seeing Trilla's face over the fifth brothers.
Mhm.
And in being so desperate not to repeat her mistakes with Trilla, she gets Grease wounded in a way that I'm sure she's going to feel responsible for, the same way she feels responsible
Mm.
for Trilla. And I think for me, I've had the trauma that you're talking about of being rejected interpersonally and not getting a gig or a show, or
Mhm.
that is the nature of trying to be in the arts world. I've also had some experiences where I've done really 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 well. I've done the best that I can do, and it was objectively, by the audience response, good, and the decision makers were still like, get out of here. And for me, that haunts me almost
Mhm.
more, because
Mhm.
hey, rejection's rejection. But when you've done everything that you can to try to steer your ship in the direction you want,
Mhm.
and you still don't feel like the choices and the agency that you have made a difference, I think it's a great discussion of that. Greaves was probably right. Sarah should have probably backed down. He probably should have listened to her sooner.
Mhm.
She probably should have listened to him sooner. But I so related to that. She is trying so hard to do the right thing, and
Mhm.
it's at that just applause, Jedi Master leading with empathy, takes the lightsaber apart so we can talk, would normally be like, you triumphed. And she did. And it still didn't work out.
This is great stuff here. Just one of my favorite passages is around this really great chunk of the book for me happens between like page 190 and like 225. This is just great stuff. A lot of it includes them fighting with each other and yelling, dysfunctional family Christmas dinner, and a lot of self realization. And we're talking about trauma and one of the ways forward. And again, part of the larger discussion, as we always say on Force Center, we'll discuss shortly here. But you're making me think of on page 198, Sear has this thing of this kind of realization that anger, which is this big Star Wars thing, right? And it's don't be angry. And I think that's somewhat you can easily look at as just outward, right? Like don't be angry towards those around you or the situation. But what about yourself? It's also destructive for yourself. And she can't forgive herself for actions, perhaps in the past. She has this. She knew how strong and easy the lure of the dark side could be. Knew it too intimately, but it was hard to reach sympathy while feeling absolutely furious with herself. So,
Mm.
when it comes to, there's a lot of ways to slice the trauma recovery pie. Let's be clear. And I'm not a trained therapist at all, but this is about her trying to find. It literally says, as Sam Magg's words, tried to find the strength to be sympathetic towards herself, tried to find kindness. So this idea that even a Jedi that deals in don't be angry, don't give in to hate, don't do all this, don't give in to fear, and that also applies to your own soul and your own action.
Mm.
And what you're saying here is, yeah, Greez is probably right, and she definitely knows it as he's sitting there on a cot, minus one limb. Definitely
Mhm.
something that came out of my actions, but for all of us to move forward, I got to start with myself, and the anger can't be focused on me for too long there.
Yeah, this is a great quote. There's a ton of powerful stuff in this book.
Mhm.
Um, how do you feel this story and crew compared to other Star Wars characters
Mm.
trying to move past their scars and their trauma, particularly in this era? I feel like the more storytelling we get in this era, the more we're dealing with characters who have been wounded by the fall of the Jedi, by the Clone Wars, by the fall of the Republic, by the horrors of the Empire, and they kind of share an awareness of like the victory against the empire isn't right around the corner. So how the hell am I going to deal with this? How
Mm.
do you feel about how these characters compare to other characters in this era?
It's so funny. It sounds like we're almost about to rank Star Wars crews and how they deal with trauma. A special Star Wars ranked. It compares closely to what's going on in Bad Batch season 2 and Bad Batch overall for me.
Mhm.
What I love about it is this crew, and I don't know, maybe it's how I interpret it, but particularly this book again, because we can spend more time with these characters. This is a crew that at least at some point becomes more acutely aware of what's going on, with them. At least they wrestle with it more directly once they have the breakthroughs. Not that other
Mhm.
people don't. Maybe, and a lot of times we just haven't spent time with those characters. I'd love just a one act play of Luke Skywalker going, "Oh, here's what I did." Instead, we get to see his actions. We get to see something different. So I think that's one of the things I enjoyed about it. There's a lot of everyone sitting down and arguing and fighting and working through it because they're kind of aware, and there's different ways they're pointing fingers, they're getting angry, but they kind of come to a spot of moving forward together and having to work through it with each other, though they're in danger of losing those connections all the way through this and losing who they are. And and that's, I think, a very modern take on it in this era where
Mhm.
mental health discussions are a little bit more open. We always want them
Mhm.
to be more, but it's a little bit more, hey, you can have these conversations. You can see a TikTok video about it. I'd like to see a Marin TikTok video about trauma. Um, that's a good positive byproduct where now we can actually hear these characters working through it.
Yeah, I know. I really like that perspective. I do think it's really similar to Bad Batch because there is this acknowledgement of not we're not fighting to win the war, we're fighting to survive and maybe make a dent and maybe help people and identify who we can help, but
Mhm.
also that possibility of like, but maybe there's just a happy ending for our family. Maybe our family just needs a place to rest. Like I feel like Greez and Hunter would be like, yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Let's start that restaurant. At least Hunter toward the end of season 2 before all the very, very bad things happen. And I think Bad Batch shares some similarities in that they're this family unit. They are very unified. They push and pull a little bit in terms of different wants, but I think Bad Batch is assisted by already being a military unit, and it's almost that identity that gives them structure, but they're also need to evolve past that identity is really interesting.
Absolutely.
I also thought it really related to the Kenobi television show, particularly some of the stuff that Seer and Cal are going through. And I think the Kenobi television show is a great partner to all this era of Kenobi does face his trauma, and I think he does accept that he can't, do one symbolic thing to fix it, but instead sort of sets a new goal to be there for himself and to be there for the next generation and finds a way forward.
Yeah, I think the comparison to Kenobi is apt and wonderful. The spirit of it's there. And again, it's because this is a book you're going to spend a little bit more time. So sometimes the themes are a little more subtle on shows, right? Though I think Kenobi's pretty direct, but yeah, I think so. It's very comparable. I'd love to have Kenobi have this moment. Sit down. So we'll have Hunter, we'll have Seer, we'll have Greez. All of them sit down with Kenobi at his hut.
Yeah. Oh, that would be great. That would be great. And yeah, I think Kenobi's themes are powerful and a couple times stated. I think they're there. I think they're there.
They're definitely there. Out and about in the public, sometimes you just need them on a billboard that Kenobi's holding. But that's not Kenobi's fault.
Get them out on the corner of Sunset with a cow like David Lynch once did to
Here are the themes of my show. They go as follows.
Yep. Anyway, let's talk more theme. So a lot of what is going on in our trauma talk, I think, is through the trauma. The characters are all trying to find purpose. The crew wants to actively address their scars by finding and achieving purpose, but they're not always in alignment. That was a great thing that was bubbling through the book until about page 215, when everybody finally just lists the different reasons they are actually there, the similar but different missions, and you get this great sense that it's the truth they'd been avoiding, because I love how much they love each other, talk about how close they are, their routines, but then they also have that, and we know what not to talk about because we all kind of know that there's some friction. So in terms of purposes, Cal sees his mission as destroying the Empire, thereby making sure no one ever has to suffer as he has, or at least do some big hits against the Empire. Arguably, in his Jedi philosophy, it's real offense as defense. Take down this base, and the people there can never hurt anybody. Sarah sees her mission is securing a future and a legacy for the Jedi, even if it's not necessarily they decided not to use that holocron, but it's more like anybody who might come along, they need to know who we were, so they can use the past to find a way forward. Marin sees her mission as righteous vengeance, I think. The separatists who destroyed the Night Sisters are gone, but they were aligned with what became the Empire, and she's just going to dole out justice because that's the Night Sister way. I love that Greez at first just kind of wants to be with his family in the ship until he can retire and start a restaurant.
Yeah, that's my goal.
But then I think I would argue that maybe one of the things that he ends up wanting is to use his trauma for the benefit of others. I love that he acknowledges, like, I'm going to have to deal with this. I'm not okay. But for right now, I'm going to make a lot of jokes about it. And it seems like he's dealing with his trauma that way, but it seems like there's almost this newfound purpose of I can keep us together by joking about my horrible trauma.
So in other words, another reason I love Greez is he's a stand-up comic or a podcaster. That's what you say.
He really is. He really is. So this is my super easy question, Ken. How important is it to know your purpose, to be aligned with the other people in your life?
It's really important, kids. Now, really
there we go.
Important. But along the way, I think what's important is knowing that this could change, or you can learn more about it, or it becomes more specific, or it becomes more powerful at different points in your life. I think I've had a bit of a change in the last couple of years about what's the reason I'm creating, whether it be art or internet content. It doesn't matter. I want some kind of purpose, and what's my place around it, and that sometimes doesn't come till later, and that's part of being forgiving yourself for the past, or being open to those around you helping you when you start being aligned with other people. That starts to happen, especially as you get older. Yeah, right. The friend list is cold a little bit or changed, and doesn't mean anything bad about those people who aren't around as much anymore. But you find the those that are a little bit more aligned with what you feel might be your overall purpose. That feels good, feels right, and it's also, I think, important to move forward. So there you go, very Star Warsy stuff.
It is. It is. Yeah. My answer to my own question is yes, it is very important to know your
Mhm.
purpose. But I think diving a little bit deeper, I think that you know many generations have grown up in our American culture, at least, with here's the path, right?
Mhm.
Marriage, house, children, career. Maybe it's not that super traditional path, but maybe it is career based, or by this age you should X, or
Mhm.
uh, keep up with the Joneses, whatever version of that is. So
Yeah.
I think that sometimes that you can feel sort of prescribed a purpose, a path,
Mhm.
and then there's a lot of frustration when that gets disrupted, or you realize
Mhm.
it's not what you want. So I think a lot of that goes on in our culture. I think that a lot of that goes on in relationships of are you just following the path, or are you truly honest with yourself and aligned on what you want?
Mhm. Mhm.
I think what hit me in this book, and what you're touching on a little bit too, is uh, for myself being aware of um, a lot of my purpose, pretty much my entire life, has been creative pursuits of different kinds, and then it's taken on lots of different manifestations, from uh, theater to visual art to stand up to filmmaking that I'm working on right now, all sorts of different things. Um, in that idea of what is the purpose for, why are you doing this, which is
Mhm.
prevalent in the book, it can change, and it can grow and fold back on itself. And
Mhm.
I feel like, there are jokes about anybody who wants to do anything creative is it's for attention. That's a part of it, right?
Mhm.
um, Everybody wants to scream, I exist.
Yeah.
I'm here. Sometimes it comes from even a more traumatic place of, you've experienced rejection, you've been told you have no voice, so screaming out, just saying anything,
Mhm.
feels like it's your purpose.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then I think in my life, I've got to a place where, like, no, there's specific things I want to say that they're really important to me to say.
Mhm.
And lately, I think I've really been thinking about what's in this book, and a little bit of what Marin in particular goes through. Of it's not even about being heard.
Mhm.
It's not even about being having something to say. Those things are there and important, but at the end of the day, in my soul, this is how I define myself.
Mhm. Mhm.
I I have defined myself in my own mind and in my soul as a creator
Mhm.
for my entire life. So what who am I if I ever lose that purpose?
Mhm.
If I can't do that for some reason. And I really love that the book got it into that level with a lot of the characters, but I really think with Marin, of this is who I am. This is, I am a Night Sister of Dathomir. I'm not
Mhm.
on Dathomir anymore. I don't have any Night Sisters,
Mhm.
but this is who I am, and I can externalize that mission to dole out vengeance. Um,
Yeah.
but I can't lose. I need to grow and evolve, but I can't lose that, because it's in my soul, my identity, who I am.
Mhm.
Uh, I think that's part of the reason that Marin's arc was so powerful to me, because it really got into that depth.
Yeah, yeah, the scary stuff, right? The who am I without this? And yeah, and there's some truths in that. Like you're talking about art, and for me, all the things I've done along the way as well. And a lot of times, some of it's been removed, and man, that's scary. Or even resisting. It kind of can lead into a fear, right? If you think you know who you are, but maybe maybe just a job comes up that's not that, but you need to take it. And you're like, but that's not who I am, and you fight it, and you suddenly you're closing yourself off to
Hmm.
purposes that could emerge. Um, so this isn't necessarily the conversation that happens, but it's like, yeah, Marin, you are a Night Sister. You always will be Night Sister, but you're also on your own. You're also Marin. Who's Marin? Look in the mirror. Who's Marin? That's a lot of what's going on here in this book. Um, but if she's not willing to step forward or um, answer those questions, she could lose some of those greater purposes that emerge.
Yeah, yeah. To take some of her past and move it into the future.
Mhm.
Um, let's talk a little bit more about the characters. Do you think the characters' purposes, the missions that they are telling themselves that they're on, do they help resolve their trauma in this story, or are they set up to do so in future stories with these characters?
I think this connects to what you were saying up top again of what this book set out to do, and also what I had said about kind of how I like they all kind of acutely aware of what's going on. I still think we're going, and very clearly, I think they've started to discover the path forward. This was this whole timeline, all of the stories set in this timeline between episode 3 and 4 are all somber, right? There's something big that hangs over all of them, the Empire, and so even a story like this has a somber nature to it. But I thought it ended in a hopeful spot, and for those who have played the game, because you sat down and knocked out 17 hours in one weekend, God bless you. I haven't done that. I just don't have the time, even if I absolutely love the game. You might know a little bit more what's going, but it just, this is why it doesn't necessarily, the door doesn't open and the video game begins. There's still time between it. So there's still room for them to grow and find that path forward. But I really felt the one thing I thought this book did well is put them all on a point to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. And yeah, it's interesting to think for me about how many of these threads are explicitly picked up in the game, which I know many listeners have the answer to that. But once again, right now, I do not. Cards on the table. But I think Sarah, I think the way she is trying to move forward, the clarity that she wants to be about empathy and building, preserving, everything about her mission is the light side of the Force. It is a productive thing that she wants to do. I love the obsession with finding the circlet of Sarish, and I love Cal's like, can I throw it at people?
Yeah.
Very funny. But I think even though the story in the book doesn't take her all the way to the archive, and I understand from the trailers, we're probably there in the video game. I think it is a successful acknowledgement of trauma of, I don't want my identity to be about fighting. That's not the way for me to get over falling to the dark side, losing my apprentice. Everything about that is pain and violence and fighting. And that's not who I can be to move forward. So I think Sarah's on a real productive, I think her purpose is addressing her trauma. They talk a lot in the book about moments where the team has managed to rescue people or save people, and I think that's great. In the first video game, Cal rescues some Wookiees, and great. Everything to me, everything about Cal's purpose works great when he's actually rescuing people. But one of the things that I think the book plays with really well, it acknowledges the actions of the video game and has a fun discussion about the purpose of a Jedi, that he's really got a sense of, I need to put a dent in the Empire. Often when I do that, I literally physically save someone. But even when I'm not immediately saving someone, slaughtering stormtroopers on their lunch break is helping. And I really liked that the book put him in that headspace of like, the Empire is a danger. They will hurt others. They have to be stopped. The stormtroopers are the agents of the Empire. There's no question. There's no pause. Just go in and kill them. It is what we're actively playing in the video game. I do question whether it's ultimately going to help him move forward with his trauma.
Yes. Yeah. No, I thought a lot of stuff was great. And again, we talk a lot about, hey, the why of the fight and the why of the actions. And a lot of that's going there. You said some great stuff about Seer, and on page 199, there's a lot of stuff in there about her, feeling she'd been so desperate to fix a mistake she made with Trilla, something that could never be fixed. Not now, not really, that she would have put her own crew at risk, and talking about how, why shouldn't she have tried to save that Inquisitor when all other options concluded were lying done and dusted in the dirt? Just ask, to me, I took that as the cost of a certain kind of action versus inaction, and a little bit of saving what you love kind of vibe too, and of just kind of her having those kind of realizations. And you mentioned her knowing how to move forward now, maybe more than in the past. And I thought that was great too, because saving Trilla is not necessarily something I would think is a bad thing, right? But at the cost of those around you, and knowing that maybe at this point she's really gone, and just kind of analyze the situation, and that leads to her having the conversation with Cal, like, and her being aware he's so close to always tapping into that dark side and always pulling it in, and you're punching that wall and the Empire's just patching the hole and going on.
Mm.
So we have to look at what our purpose is. We have to look at what's going on and really measure it differently than we've been doing in the past or up until now. There's all great
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, I really agree with you. And I think with Sarah's great moment with the fifth brother, I think the more we talk about it, the more I think about it as uh, maybe the flaw in her choice to try to get through to the fifth brother. Her to me, her flaw isn't in trying to get through to him or not slaughtering him.
Mhm.
It's that Cal's unconscious on the ground. The crew's, waiting to take off to escape, and the just save the people in front of you would have been pin the
Mhm.
fifth brother, bonk him in the head, knock him out.
Yeah.
Well, I know the helmet. A lot of jokes
Mhm.
about the helmet making it hard to bonk him in the head. But
Mhm.
escape with Cal. Don't put Greez in danger. And empathy, which is a great choice, she chose because she needed it.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
And I think that's what's the really interesting wrinkle in her choice. And I think why it's such a successful acknowledgement of her to be like, I need to focus on this archive thing.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going to be the most help to the future and the most help to myself.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And a little bit of that finding the purpose theme. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So Cal tells a story of his master, Jaro Tapal, telling him to learn all about lightsabers. And Cal gets frustrated, doesn't think he can do it in the time, fails to do it in the time. His master gives him the advice that, how can you possibly do this? Well, piece by piece. The book concludes that the family will find their way forward, that they're unified for now, but they know that there's different things they need, and they'll find their way forward piece by piece. How do you feel about that conclusion?
I love it. It's great advice just in general. I think it's a great way to measure the progress you don't think you're making. We all have that thing, and sometimes through a series of failures or a series of obstacles, you suddenly find yourself standing, and you look back and go, "Oh, that's why." And I think we all need to analyze what we do and what we accomplish or what we're trying to do piece by piece. But in terms of even like the Star Wars story, I think this is something that really is key to the rebellion and the emerging rebellion and analyzing what each piece is. And sometimes it might feel good to slice those stormtroopers in half, but what is the true forward momentum? But you look around at all these cells from Jando Dana, Harrison Dula, Luthen Rail, all the ones that were being introduced to, Kenobi and the Path, right? And
Mm,
it's also disconnected, or it feels also disconnected. And those are the pieces of rebellion.
mm.
We have the benefit of knowing it works out. I would say Ewoks are dancing, and yes, the New Republic's got some lessons to learn and some things to try to do, and we're seeing that play out in other shows. But we know in terms of the rebellion against the Empire that it does work out. There's a victory celebration song that we all love unilaterally, but and I do, and I love it. But it's so easy to just get overwhelmed. To be Cal staring at a lightsaber as he tells Sarah, and you know how many parts a lightsaber has. Yeah, life is full of a lot of little parts, and this is a great. You and I sometimes make the joke about bumper sticker advice, but this is a great way to look at it, piece by piece. Put it on a T-shirt.
Yeah, piece by piece, one step at a time. I think it is very honest to real life that sometimes you encounter those moments of blowing up the first or the second Death Star, and you get a medal or you get Ewoks dancing, and it's the big moment. But a lot of life is the step by step, piece by piece. So I thought it was great and honest within the big mythic operatic
Mhm.
storytelling. It's also a great cliffhanger for a video game. So be it. Totally fine with me. Cliffhanger for a video game and for more
Mhm.
storytelling with these characters.
Yeah.
Last big thing that I wanted to talk about, which I thought was really interesting, is so got these characters who are in trauma. They are trying to have these purposes to address this trauma, to move forward. But there's also a lot in the book that's about hiding in different ways,
Hmm.
about fear of loss, um, versus this great Star Wars idea of connection and the possibility of healing through connection.
Mm.
So, hiding in particular is I think one of the great thematic ideas that's in the actual plot, which we haven't talked much
Mhm.
about.
Mhm.
There's this theoretical tech, as we learn in the book. It doesn't exist yet. It can't quite exist yet.
Mhm.
Shroud tech that is a way to make people become literally totally invisible so
Mhm.
they can hide from the Empire. Very I don't think anybody in the book ever talks about like that's a sad victory.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's presented as the great hope for Jedi,
Mhm.
or for somebody who is force sensitive, or anybody who's wanted by the Empire, that you can literally disappear and hide.
Mhm.
I think this idea of hiding is kind of present in the character of Fret. I think it's functional. Fret is the new character introduced that our characters struggle to trust, want to have empathy for. Uh, we don't go inside her head in the book, which is I think kind of a practical functional necessity to not know exactly what she's thinking.
Yeah.
We do get some truth for her eventually, but we learn a lot of truth through the other characters' observations of her. So there is also like a lot of what is motivating the plot is even us going, what's the truth of Fret, because she's hidden from us.
Yeah.
Uh, there's as I mentioned a couple times, I didn't write down all the quotes. I think there's a good one on maybe page 97 that the crew spends so much time talking about how they are a family, how they love one another deeply, but are also always afraid to be entirely honest with one another until they
Mhm.
have that big blow up. So
Right.
lot that's all about hiding, right? Of like, I love you so much. I'm not going to tell you what's on my mind though.
Yeah. 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 And if I'm Cal, I'm going to go touch your belongings in your room and get a sense of what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's some great stuff there. Then there's a lot of great ideas of the classic Star Wars idea of fear of loss. Cal,
Mhm.
Sarah, and Marin have all suffered great loss in before this book, but they're actively fearing loss in this story. Sarah is wrestling with her fear by trying to save the fifth brother. Cal is wrestling with his fear of loss by insisting on being the one in danger, the one to sacrifice himself so his friends don't die. I think
Mhm.
Marin is in some ways the most active character. She fears losing her magic, her deepest connection to herself. She is also afraid of allowing the connection, the intimacy with Fret, which is a form of
Mhm.
fear of loss. And on page 259, when when Mirren is trying to make it clear to Cal that she doesn't want to be sent away from the battle all the time,
Mhm.
she makes some of these themes really clear. She says, "Feeling to lose those you care about is natural, but if you really care for me, Cal Kestis," she said, her lips still on his hands, "you will understand that you can't do this all on your own, and you do not have to." So a lot of ideas there: hiding, fear of loss versus connection. Which of the characters do you think is most successful at pushing through fear and finding connection?
I think it's Marin because she is to me the most active fears, concerns, loss of connections with so much going on. Everyone else has as well, to be clear, but she seems to be because this is one of the big victories of this book is it's Marin time, right? She's
Hmm.
center stage and is such a popular character that emerged from that video game. She in some ways stole the show. Just a lot of the conversations were about
Hmm.
Marin, and we love Marin too. So I just think I felt that more that there was especially where she ends up in the end, especially things she goes through. Even the romance angle, which is you set up top, and it's fun to giggle like a schoolboy. But yeah, it's a thirsty book. That's a good thing. I think Star Wars needs the big sweeping romance, but this was beyond just sweeping romance. This is like a good U2 song. It's love, desire, and the crisis of faith all going on with Aaron here. It's a great pop song, and I think she pushes through a lot of that and takes the chances, takes the risk, gets hurt by a lot of the risks. She's hurt by what goes on with Fred when a little bit of more of the truth is revealed, but then also knows
Hmm.
that there's a standing offer to join our team over here, and she knows it's not her place, at least not right now, and that she does have some of these connections that maybe she wants to foster even more. So I think not it's not a contest, but Marin wins.
Yeah, it isn't a contest, but I do feel like Marin is ultimately the central character of the book within the
Mhm.
ensemble for me. and I do think there's just great joy in the character. We're going to talk about some favorite moments. All the stuff about her power and how what it feels like to use it is so
Mhm.
great. There is just this sort of cathartic fun of a dangerous, dark, scary character. Lots of uh, insightful, funny, fun moments of her being creepy.
Mhm.
Some of just like the surface level of, yeah, this is why a lot of us like gothic stuff. This is like a lot of us like witches, and
Mhm.
just having
Mhm.
fun with the idea of a witch in Star Wars, uh and then diving in beyond just that sort of surface into what is actually the truth in the heart of this character.
Mhm.
And I think her pushing past fear to find reward in connection is the biggest victory in the book, in
Mhm.
the part of the story that is the most complete. Even the MacGuffin of the shroud is kind of incomplete. Of like, yeah, we didn't build it; it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But Marin's arc is very complete. She connects with Fret. I love that it is just such an honest connection of just
Mhm.
like there's just vibe, there's just chemistry. That person
Mhm.
just makes me, you know,
Well,
thirsty, and and as long as it's consensual, I must act.
yeah. Yeah.
Is It's powerful and it's real. Um,
Very real.
and
Yeah. Very real.
but then but that great fear in it. It was written so well. Of like, I so need this intimacy, but intimacy is terrifying
Yeah.
if you've for lots of reasons, but particularly if you've experienced loss. Of why let that in? And I think that's a little bit of going on with Cal and Marin. Of like, we are connected and love one another up to this point, and neither of us are dancing any
Yeah.
closer. But Fred is this new energy, and who knows? And but I love what comes out of all of that is all of Marin's reflections that Fret is angry too. There's no reservation about being angry. Lets Marin feel her anger, which kind of lets Marin see herself and reckon with herself fully. I love
Mhm.
Marin's epiphany that her magic was drying up, maybe because she was going too dark with it.
Mhm.
And I think there's a sense by the relationship with Fret giving her permission to be totally herself, and Marin seeing this honest accounting of herself of, I can't just use my magic the way it always has. It can't just be about vengeance, rightful vengeance.
Mhm.
I'm changed. I have these new relationships. I need to tap into my magic differently. And I think the way that she's tapping into it differently is using it not in a super goody two shoe Jedi way,
Mhm.
but using it more in defense of her family, and using it more in kind
Yeah.
of the immediate of what she wants in a situation. She's still using it
Yeah.
for violent, fun, cool, vengeful death.
Yeah. Great scene.
But it's so that argument that she makes to Cal of like, I need this. It can't just be about anger. I need to be here fighting for the family,
Mhm.
fighting for our mission too, because that's where I'm getting my power from now. And all that to me is about connection.
Absolutely. I really agree with that. Again, how you use it, right? And because I always say rage is not necessarily a bad starting point, right? Righteous
Hmm.
vengeance, as you described it earlier, are not necessarily a bad starting point. But I think Star Wars talks a lot about, maybe not staying there, maybe finding ways to move forward and finding ways to adapt and use that in a better way. And I think she's a great example of it all the way through. And that sequence of the magic, the kind of feeling it and seeing it on the inside was one of the best descriptions of Night Sister magic I've ever seen or read or heard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that there is a power in that she is not just like, I'm going to use my magic for good, but just wanting a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
purpose and direction for it. And
Yeah.
a lot of just straightforward text about my connection to my magic is different, and that's good. That's what made me feel like
Yeah.
this is the character who truly found some resolution in her trauma, took a risk, was rewarded, and is finding a way forward.
Yeah. 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 One of the sub themes we can talk about here is this identity and knowing who you are, discovering who you are, not hiding who you are. That's why when you said like the shrouds that'd be a false victory, right? Guess what? We can just keep hiding, but that, maybe to do good under the cover of the shroud. I get that maybe angle, but I agree with your take on it. Of what kind of victory would that have been?
Yeah, no, there's a practical, obvious
Yeah,
value to
yeah,
it. You
okay,
know,
yeah,
put it on young Corin Horn from Kenobi,
yeah,
and hide him from the Inquisitors. An obvious practical
yeah,
reward. But yeah, I do think it's telling that that Marin's victory comes from not hiding from her feelings for Fret, not
mhm,
hiding from her truthful analysis of her
mhm,
own problems with magic. All of it comes from not hiding.
yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
go going to some of the real hardcore Star Wars ideas about the Jedi and fear of loss and the dark side. What do you think the book has to say about all that, about the fear of loss leading to the dark side?
Yeah, it's at play a lot in that conversation with Seer and Cal a little bit later on. This is Seer and her talk about the legacy, preserving the Force, preserving the symbol of hope, even when the Jedi aren't around. There's another thing. Again, I was talking about identity that converges, but on page 226 of the dark side of the Force, your personal connection to it, it's not something you turn on and off like a faucet. I don't know about you, but that sounds like no necessary rage to me, kids. It's not a switch you flick when you need it. It's the first step on a road you often can't get off once you start down it. I was successful when I used it against Vader, but it was the wrong thing to do. Jedi can't judge everything based on success. If you compare it to
Mm,
the level of video game, Jedi can't judge everything based on success. We must judge our actions and whether they were right and in the service of the light. I think that was part of it. This is a segment that's one of my favorite Star Wars conversations. I'll put it on a list and say ever for permanent record there. But this section and Sarah and Cal coming to this conclusion, and it wasn't from a textbook; it was from learned experiences. It may have started in a lesson in a class, or Tara Sinube said some stuff that was wise, but they've earned this insight. Sears earned this insight through failure,
mm.
through a dance with the dark side, and through seeing Cal just slice through stormtroopers like it ain't no thing. Um, yeah, I loved all that stuff there and the comment on the dark side.
Yeah, I thought that was great too. I really liked their conversation around page 102, 103, when Cal is kind of going to her as his Jedi Master and saying, I know fear of loss is a really dangerous path to the dark side, and you're not supposed to have attachments. And it's kind of a romance thing, but
Mm-hmm.
aren't we all attached? Don't we really care
Mm-hmm.
about one another? Aren't
Mm-hmm.
we all kind of maybe willing to go too far uh to save one another? And I love that Sarah is just like, yeah, our family probably is attachment, but I don't know how to not care.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I think that is it's presented in the book really well. Of like, I don't have a great answer for you, Cal. I don't have the here's the approved Jedi wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
It is a part of that sort of piece by piece of like, I don't know the exact answer to that. I know attachment is a danger to the dark side because hey, I did exactly that.
Yeah.
I tapped into the dark side to make sure I didn't lose people. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but so I'm aware of that danger, but then I'm also aware of like there I have to care. That's the light side is caring. And I think this is really great because it feels like to me like the kind of conversations that the Jedi needed to have in the prequel era, but were too scared and rigid to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the kind of conversations that we do see in the High Republic of like these are guidelines, these are truths, but then sometimes the truths intertwine and we need to find our way forward almost case by case, almost
Mm-hmm.
situation by situation of yep, got to be aware that fear of loss is a path to the dark side, but you can't let that stop you from caring about people.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Oppo Rensis could hear this. I'm sorry, I'm picking on Oppo. Oh, I don't know if Oppo believes that.
Yeah, this is a Chiati conversation.
Yeah,
He needs to.
maybe
He needs
Caddy.
Chiati. Yeah, I like that Cal's journey. A lot of it could feel like, oh yeah, is he slaughtering too many people? Is he callous to this? Is
Mm-hmm.
he just seeing the stormtroopers as just faceless masks of death and they all got to go? Um, but to me in some ways it feels like his journey to the dark side is if he's on it at all is via self-destruction.
Mm-hmm.
I like this vibe that he is almost too willing to sacrifice himself to keep his family safe.
Yeah.
And not that I don't think it's about like that he wants self-harm or he wants a way out or anything like that, but just this obsession with I will I will be the the person who takes the damage. I will be the person who's,
Mhm.
in risk of dying, and how much he's not seeing that is actually ruining his connection with Marin to the point where she has to grab him with that quote and go like,
Mhm.
stop
Mhm.
pushing me away. Your life has value too. You can't be destructive toward yourself.
Yeah, I look a real world example. I have a friend who's I think he thinks of himself as a bit of a Jedi, and you could write it off as some. There's a little bit of a martyr complex or something, right? But really, the truth that is, I am the one who should be out on the front lines, taking the slings and arrows for those that I love, and I will help the downtrodden around me and my friends and family that need the help, and I will do it at the cost of myself. And it cost him himself, right?
Mm.
It cost him himself to the point where now a lot of those people that he loved and cared aren't actually around him anymore. Um, and how a lot of it was just like, hey, some of this, there's a fine line between Cal climbing up high above, and riding Dathomir birds, and and falling and dying and meeting Sims, and that's how I play the game. But then you're not there for those in the end that you think you're there for, and letting some of it, letting Marin take care of herself or be there for the fight, letting see her go through what she's got to go through. And without getting too much details, it's something that we'd have a conversation about. It's like, yeah, you're doing good. I know you feel you're out there and you're ready to die on your shield, but the end result is you will die on the shield. And then where does that leave those around you who
Yeah.
have only survived because of um, your grace and support, which is wonderful, but that's all they have. It's maybe a little more complicated as it spins out into the real world. But I see that with Cal a lot. I see that with what you're talking about. I'll be the one. I'll take the pain. Don't worry. Well, we're worried because we're connected to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of it just adds up to the great Star Wars idea of sometimes winning is just surviving.
Mm-hmm.
Uh
Mm-hmm.
and keeping on. And I think there's a lot in this book that is just really about they all love each other so much, and they're all just trying to keep the family together, keep the individuals alive with as many of their limbs as possible,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and trying not to get in their own way of helping each other do that. Are there any other big picture ideas that you wanted to discuss?
The only one I was kind of mentioning, and it kind of comes out of this hiding thing. There's two, what I thought that, and I'm not sure how direct it was, and how much Sam Mags wanted to put there. Comes out of like the Jedi Legacy stuff. There's two things. There's actually a page back in '97. You had mentioned '97 too before as a page. It's a good, fruitful page. There's a great kind of sequence where Cal's like, for the longest time, that being a Jedi was the worst thing to him, right? Because it caused him so
Mm,
much pain. It caused him so much loss. And then now, even though he still might be working through it, is that's who he is as real core, and he's thankful for it, including maybe all the challenges and struggle. There's a longer, almost 2 paragraph section there on page 97, and I think that ties in nicely to what I also see going on when Sears talking about the legacy, and why we need to be a symbol of hope, and why we need to keep going, even if we're not around. Even if you think the future, that's the future we also got to deal with now. It's about there's just this a little bit of fighting the for the oppressed, but there's talking about I'm trying to find it here on the page. I put too many post-it notes down here, everybody. But doing this so that those in the future don't have to hide who they are, and that maybe we'll get there. There are kids out there right now, Cal, kids like you were, like Trilla was. They're going to grow up knowing that they're never safe, just like you did. Don't you want to put an end to that? And I think you can tie that into very real world ideas about why being on the right side of fights, why we need to rise up and protect the rights of those out there who grow up on the run, hiding who they are, and not
mm,
getting to be connected to who they are, so they can experience what Cal experiences. I didn't like who I was. Now I like who I am, and I get to be me. And defending that is part of maybe what we're all here for, but definitely part of what the Jedi are there for. And tying it into the Star Wars stuff again, I just thought it was the quest for identity and who you are and being who you are is pretty powerful in Star Wars. And also the idea of defending that for others as well. And I think that shines through a few times.
yeah, no, I'm really glad that you brought that up. I think that is very true, and I think I've been maybe a little hard on Cal.
No,
'Cause
Cal, Cal's Cal.
yeah, well, I think I'm fascinated with the different ways that you can reckon with Jedi and violence, and I think Cal's got a fresh and interesting sort of approach to that. But I really love that everything on page 97 too. I believe it flows out of Greez asking him about having no choice, right? And just being a Jedi from birth. And it does shine through, and it does, I think, line up with what I felt getting to be Cal when I played the video game of, even though there is a lot of offense for the sake of defense of those, it's them or me, or I got to take these people down so I can save other people. There's this great sincerity to Cal that is, I think, that core of like, well, this is just who I am. And even though it puts a target on my back and maybe even puts a target on the people near me, I have to be myself. And myself is this connection to this larger thing, and helping people and everything that adds up to being Jedi. I am Jedi. That was really, really beautiful and great.
Yeah. No. Well done, Cal. Yeah. No. The Cal's that. I just think because he's the main character in the video game, that is a specific character with a name and a look and a feel, but he's still just blank enough to not understand what Marin and Fred are doing back there, and I think it pops up a few times. Like
it does in a great way of Cal, what's on your mind? Oh, okay, the same stuff that's always on your mind. Got it. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed the character, and I enjoyed getting to spend a little bit more time in his head. We are going to take a quick break, and we will be back with some of the canon moments, some other fun moments we enjoyed. Back in a moment. And we are back to continue our discussion of Battle Scars, a great book about a lovely little family. There wasn't as much canon stuff as I think some Star Wars books, just kind of a couple of fun things and maybe some deeper things. There's a mention of a Bespin Fizz, which is a drink available at Oga's Cantina.
Right.
Fret's species, the Kashiri, are largely from legends. Umwati, the species of the rich bird guy, Garrus, also has a long history in legends pulled into canon by the Tarkin book. Little things, we had the Yadu mention. I love that Garrus, the rich bird guy, was kind of jealous of Bail and Brea and thought Bail just gave into the Empire. That was some fun stuff.
Yes.
A great shout out, just page 178, talking about wanting to be a hero, just like all those stories of heroic Jedi during the High Republic always promised. It says here, a lot of great little things, and then some bigger things I want to dive into. But what did you make of any of those sort of smaller things?
No, it's always fun. It's good seasoning, and it's not as dense as others. I think Alex Damon got a day off. He only had to do like 33. I mean, and I think he deserves that. No, but I like that too. I connect with those things a little differently. Where I just go, assuming that's a species from a comic book in 1979. I don't remember, so I'll just keep rolling with it. So it's always kind of fun. But I just love the wide range of them, though, from deep legends to Hosnian Prime to sequel era mentions of like I said, Brea and Bail. I love the wide range of connections.
Yeah, I mentioned of Yadu. That was nice. Edu, rather. Yeah, and I did like Hosnian Prime. I would love for it to continue to be in storytelling, because it is a core world that's sort of rich
world, yeah.
and powerful. So it was great to spend some time kind of giving it that context to elevate it as you revisit The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
A couple of kind of bigger things that I wanted to talk about is Marin's memories of kissing a night sister who helped her, and this is one of those things that I'm going to bring up with the great caveat of, right now, I don't want to look up Marin on Wikipedia because I don't want the video game spoiled for me just yet.
Yeah.
So maybe there are answers everywhere. I did not remember Marin having memories of what was described as the way Asajj Ventress's look is in the Dark Disciple novel. How did you feel about that?
Okay with it. Good connection. It opens up a world of prequel story opportunities. Where I looked at it. It's where I went with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the gold necklace with the teeth,
Hmm.
in its memory of a touch. I love Asajj Ventress, and I would love more storytelling with
Yeah.
her. And again, full mea culpa. I did not look up Marin on Wikipedia. Maybe she remembers Asajj Ventress in the first video game, and I've forgotten that. But I thought it was significant, and I got real excited, and was wondering if there was going to be more about that in this book. But hopefully I was just like burying a log line for a different book in this book.
Yeah, or a 5-issue comic arc or something.
Yeah, yeah. I guess this isn't a bigger thing. It was just fun. I really, as I was reading the fight between Sarah and the fifth brother, and her saying, "I'm gonna show him how powerful I is." I am using the sort of force freeze technique that we saw from Kylo Ren
Hmm.
in The Force Awakens. How did you feel about that?
It's a validation for Kylo. Does he need it? No, no. I love and it just speaks to of just like anything new you see in say 2015 in a movie becomes part of the landscape pretty quickly there.
Yeah, and I also just liked it as something that in The Force Awakens, it feels upsetting. It feels like really robbing someone of their agency to just
Hmm.
make them totally take away their movement. In the hands of Sarah, it felt like this is an alternative to great violent slashing and hacking of just
Yeah,
stay there for a second and think about what you did.
the freeze button. I love that.
The freeze button, yeah. My last canon thing for me is just pedantic. There are many moments throughout the book that the word calf is used, which is the coffee of Star Wars. But on page 102, Sarah's just straight up drinking coffee. Do you think there are two different drinks in the galaxy far, far away, or do you think this was just a maybe an editing thing?
Maybe that, but now I think you have to play it as a separate drink, and now we're going to get an entire. Now coffee's going to show up. That's what I want.
This great competitor
Yeah.
to calf. We got coffee and, of course, hot chocolate from Heir to the Empire.
Yeah.
Any other canon things that you wanted to discuss?
No, that's all great, all there. And like I said, I enjoy them when they're far and wide, and I also don't like getting too distracted by them. And this was a good level.
Yeah, this is a great level for me. Some really enticing stuff, some little fun stuff, and I'm sure many more that I missed. I'll go watch Alex's video on Star Wars Explained. Uh, we've talked about as we've gone through some of the big picture ideas, a lot of the moments we enjoyed. But are there any other moments that you particularly enjoyed? If they're action, comedy, emotion, whatever it is, what did you got
Yeah,
there?
overall, I think a lot of the action, the final sequence, and a lot of people show up, and the Brood shows up, and all that kind of stuff. It was all good plot. I just was here for more of the character study stuff this time out, but I think a lot of that was interesting. The use of Marin and her magic, and actually kind of seeing it, experiencing it, and everyone kind of being like, "Whoa." Was fun for me, and it's just the Greez stuff. There's that chapter early on where we get to kind of see inside Greez's soul a little bit. And like I said, I knew I kind of liked him, but now I definitely like him even more. And he's a fun character, and these characters, I don't. When Fallen Order emerged, it's like all these characters, they're great, but it's like it's just like it's a video. It's in a video game world, and it seems kind of cut off from any other parts of Star Wars at times for me, even though these have references. But that just these characters feel a little bit more real after reading this book, and they definitely feel part of the galaxy for me a little bit more. And that's just a personal thing from the first game.
Yeah,
So
no, I can definitely see Grease, drinking at Maz Kanata's,
yes, yeah,
with Dr. Afra and Lando.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Please,
yeah, yeah. So there were a lot of great things. I think the action scenes were really well written. I did like that, like the first 50 pages. We were definitely learning things about the character, but it was this like the opening act of a Star Wars movie where there's lots of action out of the frying pan into the fire, kind of serial adventure.
mhm.
I love that how much forward movement in energy that it gave the beginning of the book. I love that. Cal's ignorance about sex was very funny.
Mhm, mhm.
Not that he doesn't actually know what it is.
Yeah.
um, I'm sure I wonder which Jedi gives that class. Which Jedi
I think it's
teaches the birds and the bees at the Jedi Temple back in the day.
the Amrati and the bees. My thought of that is those classes did exist in the Jedi Temple. in the Jedi Order, but they cut him off about 150 years ago. And
I love
Eldar
it.
Man was like, "I'll teach it," and they're like, "No, no, 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 no."
No. Yeah, maybe Jocasta Nu gives you a very ambiguous pamphlet. They're like, this has actually made me more confused, Jocasta.
And why
Um,
you shouldn't? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, I just think it was written with a great sense of humor of just him not putting two and two together very well. In particular, the one on page 105, when he was looking at the green fire around the engine room door of Cal, thinking she must have been having real luck with her powers because the green fire around the door was as bright as ever. Well, good for her.
That was a
It was
great.
very, very funny.
Yeah.
And I think that is a moment where this is not a criticism of Cal. You've mentioned a couple times we were talking about it. Of it's an art to craft a main character in the video game that the player plays that
Mhm,
is a character, has an arc, but still has room to kind of become the avatar of the player.
mhm,
And I think that that's what was so celebrated about his character, is that he has great definition, great depth, but he's also, a part of him is just like, I don't know, I'm just on my journey.
mhm,
I ate a sandwich and I enjoyed it,
mhm,
and
mhm.
then I fought some bad guys. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
You're like, Cal, uh,
Yep.
let's dig a little deeper, Cal.
Mhm.
And he does.
He does.
But these moments, I think, play with that sort of. He's
Mhm.
a character, and he is an avatar.
Yeah. That indeed. And just discuss overall just the openness of Marin and Fred's relationship, and that's an important aspect of the character. And you and I always champion not just representation in Star Wars overall, but it usually goes a lot deeper in the books, and you get a chance. I thought it was a great scene and sequence and everything about it. And we talked about the grand sweeping romance side. This wasn't quite that, but I just love that it was there. And you highlighted it up top that sex and sexuality is always present in Star Wars, but I think in the modern era, you got to choose how to do that. Right? There's a great
Hmm.
why to it, and I think it was important to just because Ray showed up doesn't mean she needs a love interest, right? I think that was very important. Doesn't mean she doesn't get one, or doesn't mean she doesn't want one, but to maybe break past some of those tropes, but to have some of the books and this is a great example of the power of it and the understanding. Talk about hiding and finding your identity and finding who you are and being comfortable with who you are, and the fears associated with that all played out well in what was, yes, at times a thirsty Star Wars novel.
Yeah, no, I liked the way it was written, of the amount of Marin just like whoa, and
Mhm,
the
mhm.
literal physical, um, the strength of her arms, and her
Mhm.
fingers, and just that it was very
Yeah,
realistic to me, to the way attraction feels in the real world.
yeah.
All of those things that add up to this, just chemical explosion, what it feels like, where you're just drawn to a specific person, was so well written. And the sort of dance of their first encounter, that
Mhm.
Cal is commenting on
Yeah.
in a funny way, of that longing, that question, is it going to happen? You so want it to happen, but you're also afraid of the intimacy. I thought it was so honestly well written, that it was very relatable, and then also important that it is representative. It is a relationship,
Mhm.
between two women, and I think it is great, that representation is there and needed. And
Mhm.
it's always wonderful to me when something is, uh, it is specific. It is a relationship between two women, and the specificity and the uniqueness of that matters. But then, within that specificity and uniqueness, there's also the relatability of,
Mhm.
of what attraction feels like.
Yes, and that it's universal, right?
Mhm.
It's all the same.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is all the same, and yet it is also different and
Mhm.
special, and that is good, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, Marin's powers in general, I agree with you. That was a highlight for me. The initial description on, I think, around page 17, of her disappearing into her flame, and reappearing, all the way to page 161, where she is just having a great time flowing ichor into
Yeah.
the
Into
first trooper's helmet.
the
It would be great if it was the first time in this book, but also just knowing the Night Sister magic visually from the Clone Wars. It was really cool to feel like you were experiencing it, up
yeah,
close, and knew what it felt like.
yeah, indeed.
And I love that also there's like a sense of creativity of like, how am I going to take down this one? How am I going to
Yeah,
take down this
fun.
one?
Oh, fun to the
Fun.
direction. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I liked a lot of Grease stuff as well. Like
Mm.
the quote on page 237. Oh yeah, he was going to play the lost arm guilt card for a long, long time.
Yeah, long time, long time.
And then the final thing I want to share is on page 73, Grease's vision of the future.
Mm.
Grease himself had some pretty well thought out retirement plans involving a nice little restaurant where he served regulars, and everyone had to listen to his stories whether they wanted to or not, because he was the one providing them with drinks.
Mm. 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 Love it. Love it.
Yeah, Grease's voice is really, really well written.
Yes.
The fun uncle vibe
Yeah.
is powerful.
Grumpy Greed.
Any other moments you wanted to share?
No, so, no, you hit them all there. I'm glad I was going to discuss the icker. Good use of the word icker.
Yeah, Icker time. Let's talk about the hopes for the future of these characters. So the book left a big gap between the first video game, Jedi Fallen Order, and this story. Many mentions of how long they'd been at this. They'd been at this for years. It sounds like there's a nice gap between this book and the beginning of the next video game. So do you want more adventures with this crew, and in what format?
I just think, yeah. I think it will come, in other forms. But like another book between this and the game seems like it might be depressing, right? Because I thought this was going to be the band breaking up to record solo albums, and it wasn't necessarily that. So I think some of the information, and again, and some of you, we intentionally kind of reviewed this book later so that we could tie it to the release of the game. Then we haven't all finished the game, all that kind of stuff, and no need to tweet us anything that no spoilers. We get all that angle of it there. Who knows what happens? But yeah, I think there's some room for more in between the two.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
there is some room, but I mean, yeah, I'd be up for hear more.
Yeah, and I think that's always a challenge with characters like this. Of you want to have the story have meaning and have the possibility for growth and change, but then the characters they have marking points where this is where the big change happens for them. But I still think there's lots of room to tell great stories and to reveal more things about these characters. So I would love it if there was another book, if there was a comic book series, if a Tales the Jedi like series got around to sharing, like, here's a fun adventure of the Stinger Mantis crew. There's a couple of offhand mentions of other adventures like that Gungan on Abafar. Like, I want to see the adventure of the Gungan on Abafar who betrayed them.
Yeah.
That sounds like good fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, as we've acknowledged, no idea what these characters' fates are in the new video game Jedi Survivor. So don't want to ask you necessarily of what you want to happen to them, because you're probably going to play through this game and you'll know real soon what happens to these characters.
Yeah.
But how would you want their stories or legacies to impact other Star Wars storytelling? Because they're really dealing with things that aren't just necessarily about their journey and where their lives may or may not end, but what is their impact on the future? Sarah's Jedi preservation journey. If the Night Sisters can return, or future Dathomir storytelling, what impact might Marin have on that? As we've joked about, is Greez Dritus in Mando season 4?
Yes, I hope he's all going for it. He's a guest star in Ahsoka too. Yeah, I would love to see it. I always don't need everything to be super connected, right? They exist, and this time period, things can exist on their own because the galaxy is so big and the fight against the Empire is so big that we don't, the selves literally don't know each other. So you can continue to find out. But I'd love some of their storytelling to emerge and show up in other things of Seer's impact and the legacy, and then how we're reading her section here talking to Cal about the future. I'm thinking of Rey, right? I think there's a lot of other names you can think of, but I'm thinking of Rey picking up the blade. I'm thinking of Rey with the feeling. I'm thinking of Finn and having that feeling, and other people, and I'm thinking of them not knowing, right? Luke Skywalker was a myth, all that stuff. So we know there's some sort of victory to what Seer set out to do. So yeah, can we hear that, read about, feel it elsewhere? Marin, the Night Sisters itself, Mando overall is being this big show about the Mandalorians and the Mandalorian culture, and that's big. I think the Night Sisters is not necessarily viewed in the general public as big as the Mandalorians. You mean the Boba Fett guys? But they're so fascinating. And when they first emerged way back in Legends to the full explosion of them as characters and a culture in the Clone Wars and beyond, I think there's room for that too, that you could mine that in. And yeah, just Greez showing up whenever Greez wants to.
Yeah, yeah. Greez is the one who I really do feel like he could end up in the Filoni movie,
Mm-hmm.
depending on his fate. Which again, don't know. My apologies. Um, yeah, I'm really drawn to Sayre's Jedi preservation journey. I want to see that rewarded. I want Luke or Ahsoka or Rey to find that cachet to have, or even maybe somebody um in the First Order era,
Mm-hmm.
lost and confused and doesn't know what to do with these powers. There was that Force Collector book that didn't make a lot of noise, but that was
Mm-hmm.
is a person who knew they were Force sensitive but didn't really know what to do with that. And I think there's lots of room to have that storytelling. I love Sarah's journey, and I want to see it rewarded eventually. And sometimes it takes years and years in Star Wars, but I hope to see it pay off.
Yeah. Yeah. And at first, it's where they could, again, any Star Wars can go backwards and forwards on storytelling. You talk about transitioning things to live action. It would be so easy to do this, right? If you can figure out how to make Grease work, but they can figure out how to make Zeb work. Like, you got a BD droid out there, you got Deborah Wilson, you got Cameron Monaghan. I always forget who plays Mara, but she's out there too. Like, you could do this if there was a call for it. And by the way, throw in Iden Versio in there. Let's do live action Battlefront 2. Let's do it.
Let's do it all. Yes, the new Star Wars video game cinematic universe would
Yes,
be
yes, yes,
great.
indeed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then with the Night Sisters, I think maybe this is me not wanting to let go,
Mm-hmm.
um, but the beings of magic. I just think there's be interesting storytelling of, is there a seed? Is there a way that their culture can reemerge? Could Marin be a part of that, or could she,
Mm-hmm.
with her magic, start a new Dathomir?
Right.
I love the corpse spell, by the way. Should have mentioned that. The corpse spell is
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
pretty cool to see happen. But also future storytelling with Maul kind of setting up his home base there, and where
Mm-hmm.
is Marin? Is that a conversation that ever
Right.
happens?
Right.
Uh,
Right.
lots of possibilities for the future, I think.
Indeed.
All right. I have a fun question to wrap up our discussion here, Ken. If you were trapped in an elevator, which of these characters would you want to be trapped with?
Man, I don't think it would be Grease as much as I love him, because I'm already there. So I got the Grease energy. I think it would be, I mean, BD1 would be the one you'd probably want if you want to get out. But I think the nice, calm conversation while you try to survive it is Cal, which is weird because I
Mm.
don't connect with Cal as much as other characters. But if I was in an elevator, Cal would know how to not annoy me quickly, but also maybe climb out and save me, because that's what he wants to do.
Oh yeah, he's real good at climbing, so he'd be very active. You know what? I'm gonna go with Marin,
Mm-hmm.
because I think she'd be an extremely fun conversation to
Yeah.
have, and lots of magic, and you know, God forbid we were trapped in the elevator because anybody was injured, she could maybe animate them.
Yeah. 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 That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going with Marin, and I googled the actor Tina Ivlev. I
Mhm.
don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Probably not. Last name Ivlev. Great performance in the video game, which leads to a great character in the book. Any closing thoughts, Ken?
A lot of fun read, and kind of a perfect read to get back into Star Wars books. It's not something you or I intended to do around these parts.
Mm-mm.
Just the workload, and then the massive, wonderful amount of High Republic novels in Phase 2 kind of got the best of us here. So this one had been sitting around, and we knew the game was coming out, so it was a great, fun read. And like I said, for me, the biggest thing was taking characters that I felt that I liked. The game was okay for me. I didn't connect with it. To now, I'm like, oh no, these are really fun, fascinating characters, and I get what you were all saying. It's a big win for me.
Yeah, big win for me ultimately is well. I think I really love these characters in particular. Fascinated by Marin, wanting to know more about the last of the Night Sisters. Fascinated by Sarah, really having gone through the ringer and still trying to return to her Jedi roots, and
Mhm.
picking up on all that. Getting to spend more time with Grumpy Grease. Getting to spend time with Cal as this weird and fascinating, totally complete character but also he's in this novel totally believable, but still playing a video game.
Mhm.
Just really fascinating and interesting way to experience something with a character. So enjoyed it very much. Very glad to get caught up. I think in general, the book reports are obviously a little bit harder for us to keep up on.
Mhm.
I intend to read the Phase 2 High Republic books. I don't know if we're going to go back and review all of the books
Yeah.
we've missed, but hopefully we'll get caught up and really pick and choose and make sure that we review some of the big ones, right, Ken?
Absolutely. It's a goal. It's a goal.
It's a goal. We'll see. Ken, where can people find us?
Hey, you can find us on Twitter at ForceCenter Pod. We're on Instagram and YouTube as well. Subscribe over there. Facebook page is ForceCenter Podcast. And the podcast is available on Acast, iHeartRadio, and a lot of other places. Just search. You will find us. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter. And as we said up top, you can support us directly at patreon.com/ForceCenter. You can follow me at Ken Napzok or go to my website, kennapzok.com for more. I know where they can follow you, Joseph, but why don't you tell them?
You can follow me on social media, Twitter, the thrashing remains of Twitter, the perfectly lively Instagram, and also Mastodon and maybe something, the Blue Spout, whatever anybody is kind enough to send me an invite to. Are you on Blue Spout?
I'm not on Blue Spout, but I'm on Spoutable. I'm sending spouts out in the world. No one's there for me, but some people are. But
you're spewing on Sputer. That's a new one, right?
Sputer coming soon.
Sputer, yeah. Find me on Sputer, handle at Joseph Scrimshaw. You can check out my YouTube page as well. Just search for Joseph Scrimshaw. But for now, for myself, for Ken, for the restaurant that I think we both hope Greez opens in the future, this has been ForceCenter.